The reason I haven't been in touch is because this whole episode rerun is getting quite old. If I didn't already know how this show is likely to end, I just might be interested in watching along with you, my friend, but based on my past experiences thus far, I'm pretty familiar with how this is gonna go. First, we'll discuss the formation of the universe and why I no longer believe that a deity is a necessary part of the equation. We'll probably talk about its complexity and the likelihood that everything could have formed on its own, at which point I'll concede that even if I did agree there could have been some kind of creative force, what evidence do you have to identify that force with the particular deity you believe in? I'll then point out the inconsistencies between modern scientific knowledge and the Quran. I'll note that the author of the Quran clearly had a view of the universe that was pretty compatible with a geocentric one. I'll then point out the silliness of the verses that talk about stars being used as missiles to drive away devils. Yeah, you know that one. And the absurdity of the idea that the sun prostrates itself under Allah's throne at night. Let's not forget the falsity of the claim that our tiny and relatively insignificant planet was created before the stars and heavens. I know what you'll say. You'll tell me I misunderstood the interpretations. We'll go back and forth on those points until ultimately you'll realize you won't convince me, and I'll realize I won't convince you. We'll probably then move on to a different topic: ethics. I'll talk about how torturing flawed creatures eternally is, in my view, completely incompatible with the idea of mercy, especially infinite mercy. I'll point out the irony that the only unforgivable sin in Islam is shirk, when shirk really doesn't hurt anybody, does it? I'll point out the moral and ethical problems presented by Muhammad's actions, including 1. Premeditative warfare and raiding of unarmed caravans. 2. Attacking villages at dawn, murdering the men and forcing women into sexual slavery. 3. Beheading the males of an entire tribe after examining the boys' genitals for pubic hair, then forcing their women into sexual slavery. But most disturbingly, 4. Entering into a lifelong sacred union with a 6-year-old child and then having sexual intercourse with that child when she was 9. My friend, if you believe these things would be acceptable today, then we have a serious problem on our hands. And if you don't believe these things are acceptable today, then you're proving my point that Muhammad was not a model for all humanity, and Islam is not God's applicable formula for all time. I know what you'll say. You'll argue something about context. We'll then move on to a new topic: evolution. I won't really argue that point. I'll let you talk this time because, given your knowledge and background, I'll assume you must accept some form of evolution by natural selection, and then I'll ask you to explain why you believe that a supernatural addition to your evolutionary model is necessary and what proof you have to support your claims. I'll point out the inconsistencies between the Islamic story of Adam, created from clay at 60 cubits tall, and Hawa, created from his rib. First, the fossil record, DNA evidence, and scientific consensus. I'll hear all your reasons for why you still insist on believing what you believe, but then I'll ask you if it seems just, or even reasonable, that a wise and all-merciful being would subject his creatures to a grotesque, sadistic torture for reaching different conclusions based on the evidence they have available to them. But I know you. You'll still try to convince me otherwise. Maybe next we'll talk about the so-called scientific miracles in the Quran. I'd ask you 2 simple questions. 1. Do the brief, vague, obscure descriptions in the Quran really portray the complexity of the scientific knowledge you claim they represent? And 2. Was there honestly no one before Muhammad's time who ever made similar observations? I would argue that the answer to both those questions is a resounding no, and therefore the claims are not miraculous at all. Oh, you're going to be upset, I know, but we'll move on. So once we realize that our conversations aren't going anywhere, I'll probably end up recommending you a few good books. And you're going to probably end up praying for me, or cursing me, or maybe both. I'll ask you to get back in touch with me after you read those books. You'll either refuse to read them and call me a few unkind adjectives, or you just might read them and go through a similar process I did. I'll tell you now though, my friend, it would be easier just to curse me. I'll also direct you to some awesome YouTube channels, like Richard Coughlin, Klingshore, Strangest Dude, and The Rationalizer. Oh, there's so many more. In the end, we'd have to probably agree to disagree. But I know you'll be left with the dilemma of hating one of your best friends and maybe even believing that she should be killed. Or perhaps you end up agreeing with her. Let me know how that goes for you, my friend.